Okay, welcome to our weekly podcast with myself, Walter from Antiques Arena, and Kieran, Taliesin Antiques.com. Today we're going to talk about antiques that don't sell, trends, how trends affect antiques. If you're a collector of antiques, give you an idea of things to collect, things not to collect, or if you're looking to buy and sell antiques, then hopefully today's video will help you out. So, do you want to give yourself a little introduction, Key?
Yeah, so I'm Kieran. My website is taliesinantiques.com. So I've now been a full-time antiques dealer since around July 23. Before that, it was more of a side hustle. So yeah, I have my own website, also have my own YouTube channel where we do these lives as well. And it's just a good way to have a real open, honest discussion about things happening in the trade, I suppose. That's me.
Now, I've put Kieran's link in the description. I'm not sure if I put the link for your website or for your YouTube channel. Either way, it's Taliesin Antiques on YouTube, and we do every other week. We'll do 1 week on my channel, 1 week on Kieran's. This week, the topic's antiques and things to look for, things not to look for. But we change the topic every week. We're going to have a couple where we miss a few weeks because someone there is expecting a baby soon. So we will miss a few weeks, but I may even do them on my own, see how I feel, or we may just skip the weeks. But I think it'll be an interesting topic. Now, you haven't been in the business as long as I have. I've been doing this for not far off 30 years. You've been professional 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
No sound, Icky.
Any better now?
That's better.
Yeah, 2 years.
So, you haven't seen things come and go as much as I have, but even so, in 2 years, you've identified things that are not worth buying. Now, I can tell you, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, and 90% of what I used to buy, I wouldn't even look at these days.
That is very strange, isn't it? And it makes you think about the type of industry that we're in, I suppose. Why people buy this stuff. And I suppose it's fashion, isn't it? Like you know about Art Deco and Art Nouveau, you know about all these different styles that are popular at different periods. That just carries on. And they just keep changing. You got to just keep it, catching up with them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. My dog going nuts. Yeah, antiques are very, very trend driven. Don't talk me now. Shut the dog up.
All right, put me on the spot there.
So,
yeah, so that's what we're going to be, I guess, looking at then is what is the situation today and compared to what it would have been a few years ago. I even know from my short time, I've probably been involved in antiques now for about 5 years, but as what I said, last few years I've been doing it professionally. And even in my time, there's things that I was buying at the beginning that now I wouldn't touch with a yardstick. So that's how quickly it changes.
well, before we start talking about all of that, if anybody watching live or watching later on wants to share anything they buy now or they don't buy now that they used to buy, we've only got a short one today. It's only an hour podcast today because Kieran's got hospital today with his fiance. So feel free to share any stories you have. As I say, in the comments now or in the later if you're watching back, because people will read the comments and it's just nice to have a heads up on what's not selling. Now, I know years ago, we used to use Miller's Guides, right? And basically, they were antique reference books, but they were picture flicks. They were nothing. They weren't specialist books, so they wouldn't tell you how to identify things or nothing like that. They would just have pictures of different items on every category in the Miller's book, and then it'd have underneath it'd have values. And back before eBay, that's how people used to value stuff. And you could sell stuff. I used to take Miller's books to the car boot sale, believe it or not, right? And I'd say, well, look, there it is in a Miller's book at £150. Give me 75. And I used to use the miller's books and the reference books and things like that as a way, as a tool, if you like, to get the sale out there, to build confidence in the items. But they were very, very strong on mass-produced items and marked items.
Yeah, again, that's interesting. I wonder at the emergence of the internet and the next stage of that, which is going to be AI, does change everything in terms of how people think about all sorts of things. And it will have an impact on trends, and believe it or not, that will probably impact what people buy when it comes to the antiques trade as well. And I wonder if back then people were only confident, I guess, with the mass-produced stuff, or more confident with the mass-produced stuff, just because they could go in the miller's guide and it would be in there. Whereas now, people may be more aware of how much of it is out there. Maybe it's like lost its appeal because they realise the mass-produced means there's so much of it, it's not really that rare. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, pre-eBay, and I've been doing eBay. I haven't done it for about 5-6 years, as you know. I'm only on my website. But when I did do eBay, I done eBay from, I think eBay was going for about 6 months to a year before I built enough courage and trust up to actually join the train. And back then, excuse the expression, but you could sell sand to an Arab is the expression we used to use, right? Basically, because they lived in the desert, you could still sell them sand. That was the expression people used to use. And you could sell anything on eBay, right? You could sell anything. Now, eBay has shown people the availability of mass-produced items. So anything that's mass-produced, and what do I mean by mass-produced? When you buy a porcelain figurine, if, for example, a Royal Dalton porcelain figurine or a Beswick figure or something like that, they know they can, if they're in a limited number, they don't limit them very often to like 1,000 or 2,000. They limit them to a year's production. That's what they normally do. Like collector's plates, limited to 1 year. Do you know how many they can knock out in a year? Millions.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, and I think maybe there's something in that. Maybe because, like what eBay, as you say, made people aware of how available these items are. And look, it's supply and demand as well, isn't it? So, when you go on eBay, if you're at the car boot sale and you were saying you had a miller's reference guide that you could just point to someone, well, that's the only item that's the only one that's in front of them. If now they can go on eBay, of course, and they can see the 25 people across the country trying to sell them, and whoever's the cheapest will win there.
Well, it's not just eBay now, is it? It's smartphones, it's technology. You can literally be, well, how many people do we see at the car boot sales now taking photographs, using AI to tell them what it is, or using Google image reverse search to identify items, and that tells them then what's available to buy. But then if it tells them what it is, and then 2 seconds later they're on eBay looking for the cheapest price. So mass-produced items are really hard now.
Yeah.
Provenance and identification have to be the biggest challenge for anyone with interest in reselling antiques and collectibles. Mass-produced and marked items are arguably the easiest for amateurs. Now, we were actually having a conversation about this before we went live. Kieran was telling me a story about a seller with some willow pattern salt and pepper. Do you want to tell him the story?
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video of a reseller who I believe does some ceramics, and they went up to a store and they picked up a willow pattern. So the willow pattern's an old Chinese pattern that was copied by a lot of the English potteries, 18th century, 19th century. So it was a salt and pepper shakers, had the blue willow pattern, checked underneath, no mark on it, but it was very brief. And I saw the foot rim. I was wondering if it was a Chinese one, but if it wasn't Chinese, it would have certainly been an early 19th century, possibly earlier than that, English version of them. But you put them back down. And what he was looking for was a mark to tell him who produced it. Now, the thing is, for me, that if it had a mark, it would have been the opposite for me. No interest if it has a mark, but what I saw would have been, well, why then? Because they're unusual.
Well, what you've got to take into consideration, the laws of identification of origin come in 1890. So anything after 1890 would have had to have had England stamped on it if it was English, or the country it was produced in. and made in England, for example, if it's English, after 1910. So not having any mark whatsoever meant he had, at the very least, a pair of 19th century English pottery salt and pepper pots in a very collectible pattern. And because he couldn't identify with the maker, he put it back down. Yet, if it had been an 18th century or 19th century unmarked set, it's worth more than, let's say, a set by Booths or Royal Dalton or someone like that would have had the mark.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the, you know, that is, well, I guess, proves the point that Jez has made there completely.
Well, thank you very much for watching. Now, when I was doing this, I started out doing all the mass-produced stuff. And I've actually got a couple of examples I want to share of things that are no longer worth what they used to be. Right. One of the big things we used to sell, can you remember these, was character jugs.
I know character jugs quite well because I might have said before that when I first started getting into antiques, I started off learning about Royal Dalton quite a lot.
Yep.
I think that's a good tip as people getting started, actually, you know, going back to what Jez was saying. If you're getting started and you are an amateur, going for things that are marked is a good way to learn. So I did buy and sell quite a bit of the character jugs, but then they were definitely slowing down. By now, I don't know when.
What does you and Mrs. call?
Shows them
What does you and Mrs. call?
The ugly men jugs.
And that is the problem. And I don't mean your missus. That is the country's opinion of them now. Things have changed. Tastes have changed. People don't want standard Victorian ceramics and things like that, or mass-produced 20th century ceramics anymore. Now, take a look at these. Right? These are character jugs, yeah? They start at £1.20. Now, you would think, okay, Royal Dalton ones sell for more. Look at that, £1.75 for a Royal Dalton one, but there.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. 1954 character jug, £1.75. Royal Dalton, that's a miniature, but they're £1.75, fair enough, £1.80. Look at the prices. What's the point? It's Sherlock Holmes, but there. Do you know I used to get £100 for Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah.
Right, that's the smaller one, not the large one. But I used to get £100 for the large Sherlock Holmes. You're probably talking £40, £45 you used to get for the small Sherlock Holmes. Now, look at this. Look at that. You've got a full collection by there. I don't even know. I know some of them. Where is it? Double-faced. Anyway, he sold all those for 99 pence. Now, I don't know whether people are aware. I done a video on YouTube fees years ago, and I explained the YouTube fees. Now, I understand, not YouTube, sorry, eBay. I understand eBay's free for public now. But if you're a reseller doing this, could you imagine selling that for 99 pence on eBay? You'd lose money.
Yeah, 100%. And
that's got to be £6.50 postage for there at the very minimum for UK. Right, and they charged us 10% of the postage cost as well as 10% of the, say, item cost. So that would be 75 pence plus VAT just to sell it before you pay for any listing fees, shop fees, commissions, or anything else. So you'd lose 75p of that 99 pence. What's the point in selling for that?
They probably got their delivery fee wrong as well. Imagine trying to pack all that into a 2 kg.
No, they're not going to get that into a small packet, so they're going to lose £2 on the postage.
Yeah.
That is a £6 parcel.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if they put it in a carry bag, that's a £6 parcel. Because you only get 16 centimetres on Royal Mail. And then it goes to medium parcel. So that there, they lost £2 to £3 on that deal there. They just well put them in the bin and been £2, £3 better off. But this is just to give you an idea.
Well, I've been taking one to the boot sale now since, you know, that when I've been selling the last few weeks. I must have tried it 5 or 6 boot sales. Was happy to take £1. Probably would have taken 50p if someone offered it. Not even a second look. You know, no one's ever asked me about it, picked it up or anything. They're just out. There's no two ways about it. It's not a reflection. You know, you can think whatever you like about them, but you've got to accept the reality of they're not wanted at the minute.
I want to say this, right? Anything we share, there are always exceptions to the rules. right? There are going to be character jugs that still sell for good money. There's going to be rare anything that sells for good money within the niche. We're talking general pieces. So let's say, for argument's sake, the run-of-the-mill character jugs. We're not talking like your toothless granny that's really rare, that used to be worth like £400-500, still gets £100 type thing. We're talking run-of-the-mill pieces that still, people you can still find everywhere and pull no money at all.
Yeah, character jugs is a good example of that, because there are collectors out there across the world, but those collectors, they're not after the mass-produced one. They're after the very limited edition, very rare to find ones, and they'll pay good money for them. But yeah, the ones you were just showing, you're going to see them all over the place. And as you said, you could have picked them up for £1 a few years ago, made a decent profit.
I still see them in charity shops and private sellers on car boot sales who are not up on these figures, right? Still asking £15 and £20 a jug.
Yeah.
And I had to think to myself, that's a good way of throwing 20 quid away.
It's interesting as well that when I see that, because we're talking about trends of the antiques market. You notice that a lot of people don't keep up with those trends, and they're still charging the prices for these items for what they were achieving years ago. And I just wonder what that, like, well, I guess, what's going to happen there? They're going to end up keeping that item for a long time.
Tell you what, then, since you've said that, that's pushed me to say about the piece that you saw in the boot sale this week gone. Do you want to, without any names or anything, do you want to give the story of what that was?
We're talking the Staffordshire. Yeah, so went up to a store for a dealer. I bought a few items from, although their prices are going up and up every week, which when you're a regular customer, you think it'd go the other way, but it's not how it goes with dealers, which is fine. People can ask whatever they want. But just, obviously there's going to be a bit of a stopgap in me buying stuff if the prices are too high for me. But there was a discussion with a dealer when they were they had a Staffordshire flatback, and it wasn't even an original 19th century one. This was one of the remakes that would have come in the early 20th century, maybe even mid 20th century. And yeah, they were trying to push it on me, and I said, I don't buy them. They just don't sell now. I wouldn't, I'd be struggle to get £10 for that. And it's not the type of stuff I want to be putting on my website anyway. Their response to that was, "You've got to be joking. You call yourself an antiques dealer. These are selling like mad. I sold 5 of these up in the last place I was selling at." And I was like, "Well, that's the place to sell them then, because they won't sell online. Certainly won't sell online." So yeah, it just seems that that's a good example of what I'm saying. Basically, is that I know that particular dealer doesn't sell anything online. They do everything out on the boot sales or markets or whatever. Maybe that's their experience, who's to say, but seems unlikely that you can sell in one place like that.
Now, I'm going to give a little context to this. When I was doing this 20, 30 years ago, right, museums were chasing us for Staffordshire flatbacks. I used to get £400-500 for a good 19th century Staffordshire flatback, especially if you got the cricketer or something like that, but they were fake then later on. But now, right, I've just done a quick search on eBay, right, just to give you an idea of some Staffordshire figures. Now, I'm not saying they're all going to be original 19th century, right? I haven't even opened any of them. I just done Staffordshire flatback figures. There's 100 on the sold list, right? And I've just gone cheapest first to give you an idea. But look at the prices. This one here, he's claiming it's an 1850s flatback. I haven't opened it. Looks okay. £8, 2 bids. 19th century Staffordshire flatback, £8.80. How much was he asking you for the one last week?
Oh, we didn't even get the price because I wasn't interested. I just got berated for not being interested.
Fair enough. But look at that. No money at all. Now, these, you'd get a couple of £100 for these, the Pearlware flatbacks, no problem at all. Right? That would have been 150 quid, 200 quid a few years ago, 10, 15 years ago. It's now a tenner. Now, as I've said, there are going to be exceptions to the rule. It's like the Staffordshire dogs, right? Staffordshire dogs still sell. But people like having the dogs and people like animals. But yet, the Staffordshire dogs, if you get the big dogs with the solid legs, right, as in all infilled, again, you're only talking £40-50 for a pair, where they used to be £400 to £600. If you get the ones with the open legs, so there's a gap between the legs, right, they still sell for more money. So there are exceptions to the rule. But Staffordshire is another prime example of something that used to be worth really good money, used to be an antique dealer stable that is now long gone.
There's also going to be a location element to this as well, because there are, I've noticed certain things sell better in, for example, America and Australia, where maybe they don't have as much of these items that were made in the UK
Yeah.
during those times. So you can get a bit more money over there. Often not enough to, because obviously then they got to pay the shipping fees as well. So it usually has to cancel each other out. You might find that if you are able to ship abroad quite easily, then yeah, you might get better. You'll find a lot of this stuff sells abroad a lot easier than in the UK.
Now, I've moved away from eBay years ago, just like this gentleman now, right? And what I have found, I can buy a good Staffordshire flatback and I can still price it up at 20 or 30 quid. And I'll leave it sit on the website and I'll sell it to Australia or America. But it might take me 2 years to sell. But if I'm picking it up for £1 or £2, I don't mind sitting on that for 2 years. But I certainly wouldn't invest 20, 30, 40 pound into a Staffordshire flatback in the thought that these days I could get 85 or 95 pound for it because you'd never sell it. That's basically throwing your money away, isn't it?
Definitely. Interesting name there.
And this comment here, moving away from eBay to Vinted. Apparently they've opened up the categories, probably similar to eBay used to, and sells for the same money but no fees. Well, eBay is free for public now, but not for dealers. If you trade, then eBay is 100% free. But what I will say, anybody selling who isn't 100% legit or isn't registered as a business, be careful, because the HMRC laws and new rules state plain and simple, these selling websites, all of them from Vinted, Facebook, eBay, Etsy, they all by law have to give all your details, your name, your address, everything you've sold, the money you've taken, everything to the government. Right, they've all got to do it. And if you don't believe me, just Google it and have a look. It is a law that passed last year, right? And they will get around. You may be listing and think I'm getting away with it, but it may be next year they get to you and they've had you. So just be careful if you're selling, if you're not 100% legit. I'm not judging because quite frankly, in this cost of living crisis, people got to survive any way they can. But just be careful.
Yeah, so he's right. The Vinted is no fees for sellers. There is a fee for buyers, but then so they, it might eat into your profits a little bit. I found with Vinted, people don't spend as much money on there. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but the items I'm selling on my website wouldn't go on there, I feel. But yeah, each to their own. I don't blame you.
Unless I'm mistaken. Okay, unless I'm mistaken, eBay are talking about bringing in a buyer's premium now, and a buyer's fee now.
They have got it for the private, for the public. So there is
Right.
the public have to pay a fee now on top of their purchases.
So that is basically it.
Same.
It's a stealth tax. It's no different to an auction house. If you go to an auction house and you buy an item and then you pay your 25% tax, 25% buyer's premium or 20% buyer's premium, then you pay your 20% tax on top of your buyer's premium, right? Then as a seller, we know that price comes out of what someone would have paid for the item. So you're still paying it. Because if you've got an item worth £100 or someone's willing to pay £100 on your item, they will calculate how much the costs are going on top and they will reduce their offer to cover the cost as well in that £100.
Yeah, totally. It's still better than eBay because eBay's for business seller is astronomical. But there we are. Each their own. You've got to do what's best for you, haven't you?
I've never had a good word to say about eBay. I haven't. Other than if you're starting out in business, then it's a good way to get it on the first rung of the ladder. But I have never considered eBay a good career choice. I haven't, because all the powers with eBay, one day they can say, no, you're off the site and delete your account. I've never had a good word to say about eBay. I haven't. And the amount of scammers on there that I've been ripped off with over the years is shocking. Anyway, I love character mugs. Their lack of value is a crime. The downside with it is it's mass produced. But believe it or not, it's not just character mugs, right? As we've said, Staffordshire flatbacks have got real history, right? They got no value. Do you know, I buy a lot of glass. Right. And while a lot of glass now is becoming more and more desirable, people, they hold a piece of glass up because it doesn't have a maker's mark or something like that. They have no value on it. The amount of times I buy a bit of glass, I'll give you examples. I'm not talking 18th century glass. I buy 20th century art glass, right? And I buy it for £1, £2, £3 at the boot sale. Kieran will tell you, he sees me do it all the time. And I'll come home, I'll do the research. There's a website, 20th century factory glass, is it? Hang on.
20th century glass, I think.
20th century glass encyclopedia. Let me share this. Where are we? Right. This is a website I go on, right? Glass encyclopedia. You can come here and you can just type in any of the makers and you can do the research. But the amount of people on the car boot sales will pick it up and go, it's a glass vase or it's a glass bird, and they don't put any value on it. And we can buy it for a couple of £. Glass is seriously undervalued purely because people can't identify it. That's what I find with glass. But same with the character jugs. They're undervalued because they're mass produced. That's why I feel they're undervalued. Because supply and demand, as Kieran's already mentioned, the supply far outweighs the demand. Okay. Murano glass, could we talk about glass? Notice the change in the last year. Murano glass seems to really out of fashion. Sometimes the clear ruby glass does well. So you're talking Bohemian and things like that. Now, what I will say is, as I just said, I buy glass all the time. Glass, I think if you look at my website, I think it's 30% glass of my products are 30% glass, whether it spans from 18th century drinking glasses all the way up to 20th century Murano. But there is a reason Murano took a hit, and that is because of the Chinese copies. A lot of people have lost confidence in Murano glass and other art glass because they can't identify where it's from.
It's interesting you say that, because I think that's true of a couple of other things as well. But yeah, that's definitely the case. Chinese copies, people, it's not just those Romanian glass fish are a good one as well. I think people are more and more aware now that they're Romanian, but they were called Murano for years. Auction houses were calling them Murano, and they were the whole time they were Romanian. And I saw
some have been done by Murano, I think, because I'm sure I have seen some on, because you can, with Murano glass and things like that, there is a really good Facebook site as well that will help you. I've put loads of Murano up on there, and they've said yes and no, because I don't specialize in Murano. I don't specialize in anything, to be honest. I'm just a general dealer. And sometimes I'll pick a piece up and I'll ask for some advice. But there's a really good site on there. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people have lost trust because of misattribution. Is that the right word?
Yeah, and it's quite a blow, isn't it? Like a really good, high-quality Murano piece is hundreds, isn't it? And if you buy it and then it turns out to be a Chinese copy, and you usually know as soon as you've got it in your hand, it just doesn't feel right, and it's just too big of a blow. And yeah, you say you can't. It's quite difficult to get that across on the camera. I think you have to really be good with your photography to really make a piece of art glass shine, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think as a result, it's just one of those markets which is it's fallen a bit.
Now, I'm different. I'm the opposite, see, with this statement. I find Emplee's on the up.
Yeah.
Now, I picked up a beautiful early Emplee decanter on Sunday from Madley. And this was one of the early ones, mold blown with a hand blown stopper. Because we know it was early, because then they went to the cork around the stopper, and then they went to the plastic sleeves around the stopper. So we knew it was an early one. And when we looked online, they were crazy money. They were like 150, 180 quid, weren't they? Something silly like that.
I think with Empoli glass, I find the collectors are kind of they're not necessarily collecting them because of their history or the link to Italy or anything like that. They just like how they look, and they're quite kooky. And I think
colour and the shapes and colours and the designs in the house. They're a good interior design piece.
Yeah, they're quite. I just find they're quite in. You are probably right that some of the more obvious ones slow. think green's probably the most popular color. So if you get anything that's a little bit off, a little bit different and bright or an unusual shape, that should go. But maybe the more traditional ones are a bit slower. Or maybe he's not referring to the bottles. He might be referring to another part of the Emily did all sorts of things, didn't he?
If I can just, before I move on to this comment, let me just give you a final thought on this comment. And that is, Murano has been such a worldwide known name and such a big name, it has always demanded high value. Emily hasn't been anywhere near as known. So Murano now, with all the Chinese fakes coming in, Murano is one of the most heavily faked glass there is with the Chinese glass. And the Chinese glass is seriously good. But Murano peaked years ago because it was always sought after. And not being funny, if you learnt to blow glass on the island of Murano years ago and you told the secrets of how to blow the glass, your life would be over. They used to threaten people. You weren't allowed to tell the secrets of how they made their glass. It was that important and that special, right? But Murano glass really was at its height probably 5-10 years ago, and you could get hundreds of pounds for pieces. You can still sell Murano glass now, it's just at a lower value, whereas Empoli wasn't as well known, isn't as copied as Murano. So you just got a question now of the only thing that's killing Empoli a bit is the more common pieces are available on eBay cheap. Because let's be honest, we know anybody selling on eBay, practically all the public, they're giving it away. They don't want it. They find out what it is. They list it for nothing. They don't care what they get for it, and it brings the price down of everything else. But if you get a good piece of Empoli, same as a good piece of Murano, they will still sell. That's my take on it anyway. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you can be authenticate the Murano and make there's no doubt about it being a genuine Murano piece, then I feel like it will get the value it deserves, because people do like it. But Empoli's not just copied in China. Sorry, Murano's not just copied in China; it's copied in Italy. There's a couple of videos like this. You can find them on YouTube. They're really quick videos where people are showing Murano glass is copied in like Tuscany and locally, even if weirdly, even in Venice, because Murano's an island part of Venice. But yeah, it's like there's a tourist market there where there's shops selling fake Murano. There's people going in the shop showing up even in Venice itself they're selling fake Murano. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's that
Even fake, even Murano with a label that says Murano on it can still be fake, because there are fake Murano labels now. The Facebook group I mentioned earlier, Murano Glass, they have a full file on fake and real labels. The Glass Encyclopedia have a file on fake and real labels, not just for Murano, but for all makers. So that is definitely one, if anybody wants to consider that. I'll finish the comments off before I look at the next thing. Vinted is no fees for private and pro sellers. All I've ever sold on was eBay. I've tried Marketplace, but I have no luck on Marketplace whatsoever. I just get messed about all the time. It's constantly, do you still have this item? Yes. Did I answer you? You get nothing after that. I hate Facebook Marketplace. I've never tried Vinted. I don't know. Have you ever tried Vinted?
Yeah, I've tried it within the last year. I used it as a way as, to be honest, my lower value items, which I feel are a bit more vintage, and the people might pay a tenner for just because they like the look of. It's been fine. It is fine. You get your people pay a tenner, you get your tenner. But they've had to pay a bit more to Vinted. But I just thought I did test a few of the higher value items on there, and they just don't get the interest. So for me, my personal opinion is that it's a marketplace for people who want to, especially when it comes to like antiques and stuff, they want to pay a tenner, 20 quid for things. They don't want to pay what I'm.
But if you're selling stuff for £5 or £10, why would you want the hassle of packing, shipping, and all the rest of it? Just go to car boot sale. That's car boot sale items, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. But at car boot sale, you might get 50p a pound, whereas you might get a tenner on there. So
I don't mind paying a £5 or a tenner for something.
Oh, so it's you.
Yeah, you are right there. I do take that into account, honestly. So glad eBay has competition now like Vinted. In fact, you have to wait a week for your money. Really?
Yeah, I think on eBay eBay that's the case. I think if you're public, I don't know a lot about this because I am selling on eBay, but less and less. I think the public now have to wait till a week for their money. Vinted, if you're a business seller, you have to wait longer than that. You have to wait a couple of weeks, I think.
I haven't been on eBay for, I think it's about 5 years now, 6 years. So I'm really out of touch with how eBay run things. But I tell you now, I wouldn't be happy. Basically, what they're doing is they wait until the buyer gets the item before they give you the money.
Yeah,
That's
and they
basically by
want.
the sound of it.
I think they want to. They want you to keep your funds in eBay, so you spend in eBay as well. I think that's the idea behind it. I think they were quite open about that. So there's all sorts going on. As you say, we're probably not the best to talk about this sort of stuff now because
It's a
I'm still
whole
on
other
there.
subject, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But just out of curiosity, right? How much do you think eBay turn over a week? Out of
Oh,
curiosity.
oh,
Millions, tens of millions?
easily, yeah.
So how much interest are they getting on holding everyone's money for a week for free? What a side hustle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I did mean jugs. Collected 8, including the poacher with the fish you showed, but stopped buying them. I have to remember I buy to sell, not to collect, which is tough sometimes. I agree with you 100% there.
Exactly.
And believe it or not, even now, when I go out, I'm still drawn. If I see a Dalton cartridge jug or something like that on the floor, I'm still drawn to it because I spent so long buying them and I trained myself to spot all the stuff early on. And it takes a lot for me to resist and go, even if it's a pound, and go, do you know, I'm only going to get £2 for it if I'm lucky. It's not worth the hassle.
I remember just this week there was a table, wasn't there, with 2 good-sized jugs of Mason ironstone, and the Mandalay pattern. Now that was big. I think I caught the tail end of that, but that pattern was
Yeah.
really popular. And there was 2 of them on the table, and they wanted £7 for them. And I was looking at them, and they were like, I was just like, you haven't asked too much. I just don't think I want them because we've only talked about character jugs. My opinion is that pretty much anything that was mass produced or made, in a high volumes in a factory, going back to the 19th century, it's just not got that value anymore. I think a lot of Victorian ceramics are out, and everything up and beyond that as well. So, yeah, I don't even buy that stuff. Anything that's like anything that I think I'm probably going to end up trying to get a pound for on the boot sale, I've got to stop myself buying it. But my instinct is to look at it and ask the price because I know it's old. So, yeah, it's a tough one to keep yourself on check.
I'll stop the comments a minute. I want to share these couple before we wander off too far, right? First of all, is this one here, collector's plates. People bought these, right, 20 years ago, 15, 20, 30 years ago, right? And they were paying £30 to £50 a plate. Dalton plates, Franklin Mint plates, you name it, collector's plates, right? They were sold on the premises, they were limited edition, and they would always be an investment and go up in value.
Yeah. I've had some bad stories with it, like heartbreaking stories.
£1.75, £1.75. Well, I don't know how long it's going to be in the £1.75 or £1.76. Now we're talking Dalton plates. Now these would have been £30 to £50 a plate, but as I've already said, they were done in the limited run of a year. So it wasn't like 5,000 plates or 6,000 plates or 1,000 plates. It'd be for a limited run of a year. And they can produce so many. But look at it. Collector's plates. Don't touch them. Now, I did buy some plates the other day. I bought a load of Danish, but I bought them because they were Danish. But you wouldn't see me picking up a Royal Dalton collector's plate anymore unless it had something really unusual on the design. Like you got everything here from Spitfire airplanes, Fox and Hounds, everything.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but when you're contacted by members of the public who have had a relative pass away, this is the sort of stuff I see most when they send me pictures.
Yeah.
And it can be
I get off
heartbreaking.
this all the time.
I've been in a couple of houses and they've got them all hanging up on the wall, and people asking me saying, "Oh, how much are these then?" And they'll be saying, "Oh, they collected them for years. They always said to me they'll be worth a lot of money one day." I have to be. I don't want. I can't buy them at all. There's no value to me in them, and it is a shame because they genuinely spent a lot of money and really believed that these collector's plates, if they had the whole set and they just kept paying and getting a new one, that one day they'd be worth their weight in gold. But they have plummeted, and They're just not wanted.
Same as royal commemoratives, isn't it? Everybody who's anybody had a royal commemorative, whether it was Charles or Diana or whatever, they've had a royal commemoratives. But what they don't realise is they're made by the millions, and because they were royal commemorative, everybody kept them safe and thought, oh, they'll be worth money one day. And there are so many of them out there, and so many people now who are not royalists, they're worth 10 pence.
Yeah.
I've got a stall full of royal commemoratives that come in a clearance, and I can't get 50 pence a cup from. They're in my 50 pence trays. I can't get it for royal commemoratives. You know, then collector's plates, as you've said, every time we go into a house for a house clearance or to value stuff in a house, that's one of the things we get offered, collector's plates. The amount of times people message me and go, oh, I've got collector's plates, I've got commemorative way, I've got, you know, some Royal Albert and all this and all that. And I'm instantly thinking, well, so far you haven't said anything I'd even consider buying.
Well, it's funny, I had a call this morning. I'm going off to a different subject now, but with furniture. And there was all the list of things, the ones that make me laugh, not make me laugh, but like a corner cupboard. You can't sell a corner cupboard. But what's strange is a corner cupboard is actually quite a useful bit of kit, really, because it sits in a corner. But they were made in that old brown furniture. And it's not about whether it's useful or not. People just don't see the value of having them in their home. You got to remember as well that what a lot of the younger generation, who are the ones who would have the disposable income now and are decorating their houses and stuff like that, they don't want their house to look like what their grandparents' house looked like. They want their own way of doing things. So yeah, you've just got to take all these things into account and try your best to move with the times.
Honestly, you're right. I could probably show stream after stream after stream of things that don't sell no more. I will say, Wedgwood Jasperware, I done a very similar video to this 3-4 years ago, as I said to you earlier, right? And I showed in that video they were getting 10 pence and a penny a piece for Wedgwood Jasperware. The prices have gone up because I was going to show you a stream. I'm not going to bother. People are now getting £1.50 and £2 and £3 a piece, which, although that is still pathetic money, is 50 times more than what they were getting a few years ago. So it is, maybe there's more of a collection, or maybe the Wedgwood Jasperware seems to be going abroad. I don't know. But there seems to be picking back up slightly, because when it went down to like 10 pence an item and it's now back up to £1 or £2 an item, still sounds pathetic, but you know, it's something on a upward trend maybe. Yeah. But what I've personally find, or the way I work, is like yourself, people do not want Victorian ceramics. People do not want 20th century ceramics. The only time I buy them, well, I'll pick them up in house clearances and things like that, but the only time I'll go out of my way and specifically buy something like that is it's got to be a top-notch maker, it's got to be banging with design, or it's got to be a substantial piece, large enough that it's a standalone in a room, because people like minimalist rooms now. Look at your room there, you're in your office there, it's plain. The amount of houses I go into now, and it's a plain house, and they have one lamp and one picture on the wall. Yeah. They don't have houses like they used to now, with fireplaces with ornaments all over them and shelves around the top of the walls with ornaments everywhere. Them days are gone.
Well, you never see a Welsh dresser with a load of blue and white plates now, do you? Whereas
I don't even see Welsh dressers no more.
No. Well, they plummeted. They used to be.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about the beginning. I've got 5 or 6 years experience in antiques. So I'm not talking from experience, but I've had a store in the antique centre for 2 years. So I'm just going by what the other dealers have told me about how the business has changed. And yeah, they used to say, you know, they would spend themselves as a dealer on a good old antique Welsh dresser. They'd spend £1,000 because they knew they'd get £3,000 for it. Now they all spend £100 on it now. They know they'll struggle to get 500. So that's the trend. It's that's how things have gone. And people don't want a Welsh dresser because they don't want the Victorian blue and white plates. That was the reason you had one, wasn't it?
Well, it's not just that. Brown furniture's gone, isn't it? Brown furniture's dead. Now, 10, 20 years ago, people were throwing away mid-century furniture. They were burning it. House clearance boys were burning it in the garden. Now they're burning Victorian brown furniture and selling the Danish furniture from the mid-century and the Scandinavian stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the older furniture, the only thing that's keeping it going, I know antique people don't like it, but the what's it called? I can't remember what it's called now, but where you paint the furniture, where people do that as a hobby, basically.
Oh, shabby chic and that type stuff. where they
Yeah.
they distress it, they paint it white and then distress it back.
Not even that. No,
Is
they
that what you
they
mean?
paint it all sorts of colours. I've seen people painting their bright pinks and stuff like that. I can't remember what that's called now. It's got a name as a tip, but anyway, upcycling. That's the one. I think that is it. Yeah. So it's
Upcycling, right?
yeah. So yeah, that's sorry, Des just said on the comments. I didn't just remember, but yeah. So that's what people. That's the same. You know, the thing is, a lot of people don't like that. I don't like it. I prefer the old antique version. However, it's better than it being burned or cut down or destroyed,
Yeah.
isn't it? So you can always strip the paint back one day. So there we go.
Even my own house has changed, right? If you went back 15 years, right? Even when I started doing YouTube 7, 8 years ago, I showed videos of my house now. I used to have museum display cabinets all the way through the entrance hall with Chinese porcelain and Ankara and things like that in the cabinets. You come into my office and I'd have antique walking canes all down the wall. I'd have Chinese lamps everywhere. I'd have art on the walls. Yeah, I met my wife. I've now got 1960s sideboards and very minimalist. All my stuff got put away. It's
Yeah,
tastes. People's tastes change, and people don't like clutter anymore, do they?
yeah. It's I think it's what they associate with the previous generations. It's just natural, younger people don't want to have the same house as their grandparents had.
Yeah.
They don't want it to look the same. So it's just what we're talking about. The trends. If we were to do this video as old men in 20 years' time, we'll probably be saying all the stuff we think's good now is out, and then maybe all this stuff will be back in. Never know.
Well, on the other note, right, Whitefriars. I used to buy Whitefriars glass at the car boot sales 15 years ago for £1.
Hmm.
5 or 10 years ago, Whitefriars had a peak, and you could get £1,000 for a vase. I think it's come down now, but it's still saleable. I picked up that little finger vase with you the other day for 50p, and when I looked online, they're still 40 quid. So there's swings and roundabouts. There's things that have gone up as well as down. It's not all that's gone down. Some things have gone up.
Well, there was a Whitefriars vase just a couple of weeks ago. This sold. I'm just looking it up now. It hit a record, £20,000.
One
Whitefriars
vase, there you
Ruby
go.
banjo vase, one vase, very rare one. So yeah, it's still in as far as I'm concerned.
It's not what it used to be, but yeah, things have turned round. I agree with the comment here. Some of the Chinese art glass is fantastic, and in all honesty, they want to stop faking everyone else and do their own because some of the Chinese makes are superb.
Good
And let's
thing with
be
glass,
honest,
isn't it?
Chinese have always produced their own art in their own
Mm.
name and always been the best in the world. They had the porcelains before anyone else, everything.
Well, I like a lot of the paperweights they do. The ones which are not trying to be anything else; they're just trying to be their own style. So yeah, the Chinese do very good glass. It's just when they copy them, I guess not just
Yeah.
them, anyone copying, but there we are.
Look at that. It's a 2 week wait on your money from Vinted.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, it's crazy,
I wouldn't sell on it.
just
I
holding your
genuinely
money.
wouldn't sell on it.
Yeah,
Sets at China auction, they can be cheap, very cheap compared to the retail, huge discount. You can go into an auction house and they will not touch a piece of ceramics, mass-produced ceramics. It will all go into job lot boxes. You can buy a job lot box for £5 with 50 pieces in it, and then sell it on for £2, £3, £4, £5 a piece. That's a fabulous business plan if that's what you want to do. We try to cherry pick the better items and the more valuable items.
when I was buying from auction, this is how I got so much, for want of a better word, rubbish now. It's because you buy these job lots because you want one or two of the items, but you've got the rest of it then, haven't you? So yeah, that's it's one of the pains of auction, isn't it? It's, when they don't identify something, but you got to keep all the other stuff to get it.
You've been selling next to me now for a while. Right.
Mm.
Explain what my store looks like.
So you've got the one end, you've got the 50p crates, and then it's kind of gradually going up to the sort of higher value items. Then you've got your cabinet or your jewelry and stuff. So yeah,
Basically, I have one very small table with items priced £5 to £10. I have a little silver cabinet box with bits and bobs in it, right? And anything worth up to a fiver goes in a 50p crate. And I have 5 or 10 crates on the tables for people to rummage through. And I don't care if it's worth a fiver. It's going in there for 50p. I don't want it. And even then, how much do I bring home every week? Because I can't sell it at 50p's.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, this is the thing. I think that's the thing. Well, we're not talking specifically about boot sales today, but people do assume when they go to a boot sale with their, with things we're talking about, they can take them to a boot sale and they get £1 an item. But it's not about money. Like, people don't want it. This is the thing. If you can't get something you can't sell something for £1. Like, I've taken things now to boot sales for several weeks, ceramics, glass, and I've wanted £1.50 for them. I've still got them. So what does that tell you about the market? Because thousands of people have seen it. These boot sales we go to unquiet places, there's thousands of people seeing it. So
yeah, price is irrelevant if nobody wants it, innit?
Yeah.
Karen, I'm very sorry about your mum. But this is a perfect example of this. She couldn't even give the plates away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame when that happens, but that's the market.
In Ukraine, you can only sell vintage or antique ceramics if they are in excellent condition, yep, and beautifully decorated. Anything mass-produced, the shows like Bargain and Antiques Road Trip killed anything with the slightest chip or fracture. But I find that helps for us because we may pick up a piece of 18th century porcelain with a chip on the rim, and somebody will go, "Oh, I ain't buying that. It's got a little chip on it." But a piece of 18th century Chinese, they'll buy it with a little chip on the rim. Or, for example, I bought a plate completely snapped in half the other day, which was 18th century English Delft that had been broken in half. Now, have you ever seen a piece of perfect Delft ever?
No.
But I agree, mass-produced items, if they're damaged and they're mass-produced, then they got zero value.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got an intake on that, Key?
Well, no, it's the point is, the thing about mass produce you have to remember is that you're not going to be the only one selling it. There's going to be several sellers across the world selling it. So people would rather pay a little bit more, or even a lot more, and just get the perfect one than the broken one. That's just so yeah, mass produced. If it's damaged, get it.
Do you know, I've actually watched a YouTube video. That why I smiled. I watched a YouTube video, right, where they set up a store with antique ceramics, right, and people were throwing, balls to smash a teapot or a collector's plate and things like that, and they were taking their frustration out and smashing old ceramics and that. I've actually seen a YouTube video on that. It was quite hilarious, to be honest with you.
Okay.
60s and 70s, milk glass is a staple. Pyrex tableware appeals to retro. To be honest with you, 60s and 70s, it's like the Danish furniture and that is something that's gone the other way, innit?
Yeah.
It never used to sell. It's like the white rice. The white rice is 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
The 60s and 70s is really hot.
Yeah, I think well, I think there's a lot of people who grew up in that era, or just sometimes it's not that though. I see younger people who like the mid-century stuff, and obviously that's before their time. It's hard to put your finger on it. Why is mid-century popular at the minute and people like the style? I don't know, but they do. So you got to jump on board, haven't you?
So what do you look for when you go out and about? Because I know you haven't got that much longer left. What do you look for, and what do you avoid?
So what I'm looking for now is I'm looking for unusual. So something that, I'm thinking about pieces I'm going to put on my website and is going to get people to go to my website to see something they haven't seen before. I think, things that are coming to my mind at the minute, I like my ethnographic, I like the Chinese stuff, if I can find it. Beyond that, I like folk art, for example, one of a kind, something that is, you can see the hand of the person who's made it, and, hand painted stuff. So that's what I'm looking for, is something that I just feel that someone is not going to be able to find it very easily elsewhere. And if they are, then there's not going to be many of them. So what I'm avoiding as a counteract to that is mass produced. Anything which has got, a huge market. Now, what's interesting, I suppose, you could say a lot of Chinese porcelain was mass produced. But that is seen as different because there's a different element to Chinese porcelain, which is the collectors across the world, B, the fact that they were all still hand painted and were done at the highest quality, and there's there's different types of symbolism and yeah, things that go with that. Whereas other mass produced, when we're talking about the difference between a mass produced Chinese item that's hand painted, made in a certain style, then gone across the world, whereas a Royal Dalton is usually transfer printed or made to look exactly the same thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So that's what I'm looking for, is things that are difficult to find elsewhere, I suppose. How about you?
I'm similar to you. The first thing I look for is a story. Give an example. I bought that Belgian Majolica tankard this week up in Madley, and I had an early 20th century Belgium tankard. It was Art Nouveau in style, so it already appealed to me because I love Art Nouveau. It's just back to nature, organic lines and flowing lines and things like that. So I already loved it. And then I turn it around and I see Verde or something like that wrote into the tankard, which was peace. And basically, it told a story of how they were celebrating the end of World War One, early 1919, end of 1918, something like that. And this tankard was made. They still had the Art Nouveau influence. They were celebrating the end of the war, and this tankard come in the car boot sale, and it was such story. It may have been a mass-produced item, but I've never seen another one, and it isn't another one online. So I go for stuff that's got a story, first of all. Another example, I bought that 18th century Chinese tureen up in Madley again at the start of the season for a £5 in front of you. It'd been broken in half. They loved it that much. They'd stapled it. Now, back in the 18th and 19th century, if you broke a bit of porcelain, it was that expensive, you wouldn't bin it. You would restore it. You would love it. And I loved the fact that it'd been professionally restored, stapled. It was a beautiful work of art. As you say, Chinese porcelain was mass produced, but it was mass produced. It was handmade mass produced, not machine made. It was hand painted mass produced, not transfer away. And it was porcelain. And these were the first people to ever do porcelain. We do cheap knockoff pottery. So yeah, I go for anything that's taken somebody a lifetime to learn the skill. So handmade, hand painted, a story, things like that. I will buy mass produced, unlike you. And now I will buy Royal Dalton figurines, things like that, but they have to come in for £1 and £2, £3. Because then I know if I put them up for 25, 30, £40, they may take 5 years to sell, but I've only put £1 or £2 into that. And if I put £1 in the bank, what am I going to get in 2 years' time? 80 pence back? And I can get my pound back. Let's be totally frank, right? So that's the type of things I look for. It's got to have a story. It's got to be quality, handmade. It's got to be a good name. All them type of things. Condition is important to me, but not as important. As I've said, I bought that Chinese tureen that was broken. I wouldn't buy mass-produced items anyway unless they were pound. So the condition doesn't come into it because a lot of what I buy is so rare, I'll accept the damage. I bought that Delft plate broken in half.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a story. I bought once a plate for 10 pence at a car boot sale in 7 pieces. On the back, there was Chinese character marks. And it turned out to be, Worcester started, I think it was in something like 1753, somewhere over there, early 1750s anyway. And when Worcester started, the first marks was as fake Chinese marks because they were copying Chinese. And this was one of the first plates Worcester had ever produced, and it had all the Chinese marks on the back. And I had £600 or £700, something stupid like that, for a plate in 7, 8 pieces.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's an interest, and you touched on it earlier. I do, like you, think that the TV shows have had a big effect on that. They basically say things like, if it's damaged, it's worthless. They don't put any context or nuance around that. It's just damaged, worthless, which is a load of rubbish. So yeah, that's I totally agree. I can see
it goes on rarity, don't it?
It's history, isn't it? Where are you going to find another one? So of course it affects the value. If that was a perfect plate in perfect condition still, then yeah, you get a bit more for it. So ultimately, people will look at that and think, well, it's a one-off. When am I going to see that again? So
I don't actually do this job for the money, unlike 99.999% of people out there. I do this job because I am hoarder, if you like. I'm addicted to the story, the hunt, the treasure hunt, the love of the antiques. I love the items I buy more than I love the money they're going to bring me.
What TK's saying here's a good point as well. Something I touched upon in one of my videos recently is that the best type of antique you can get is kind of like a period piece, so something which represents its period, and it is a true representation of that time. So whether that be art and crafts, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, if it's one of those pieces made during that time when that fashion was in its in its pomp, that's great to me. That really tells that story. That is of its time. So that's what I'm looking for as well. And I know we've hit on our 2 o'clock, so before I go off on
Well, before you go, one final tip you can give to the viewers then, for them to go out and buy something tomorrow to collect or to sell, what would be your one bit of advice from?
Ooh. Well, I think I hate to copy your words again, but I think story is a big part of it. You need to buy it and think, have I got something now which is people are going to come to me for, and not go through the list. Say you're selling on eBay, they're not just going to scroll looking for something and go past. You're going to be one listing amongst 10, 15, 20. You're going to be one listing on its own with a unique item. It's not about saying it's the only version of that that's made, but if it's handmade and if it's made during its time period and it is antique, then well, it is a one-off, isn't it? Even if it is done, even if it has been done similar, being similar, it is unique. It is its own thing. So that's what I'd be going for. Anything that's unique, handmade, and of its period. If you do that, you can't go far wrong.
Mouseman furniture, but there.
I don't mind Mouseman, but I don't get it at the same time. That is a good example of mass produced, which seems to go for me, it's my own personal opinion, but it seems to go way beyond its value. But there we go.
Yeah.
I know it's good quality.
I haven't had a huge amount of Mouseman. For me, again, uniqueness, story. It's got to be a standout item on there. If you're paying any sort of money for it, either make sure it's something you love and you can live with if you can't sell it, or if you want it to sell, then you're looking for either a top name, a top skill involved in making it, or a real story behind it. Because otherwise, you're just in the trove of sellers and you're never going to sell it. What is it we just say? When you're on eBay, it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, especially if you got a match.
My house used to be a museum, trust me. And then my wife is into IKEA and 1960s and 1970s. Anyway, we may pick up this one another day because there seems to be plenty of interest in this topic. But Kieran's has a hospital appointment to attend, so we'll cut this one short. If you've got a comment, please share it, because we may come back to do this video again, and that way then we'll cover your comments that you put in the next video, because there's been quite a bit of interest in this one. We've had plenty of people on the live, quite a few watching live, and we may revisit another day. I know what you think about that one.
I love it.
But
yeah, really
you can't stay on. Are you okay with that? Yeah?
Yeah, I like that. I do like it.
Thank you very much for coming on, everybody, right? Go across to Kieran's channel, Taliesin Antiques, on YouTube. Next week, we'll be on his channel. I'm not sure what we're doing next week. We'll have a chat about it. We did suggest something. I can't remember what it was. Can you remember?
No, I can't, but we'll work it out.
We'll have another antique-related topic next week. And so go across, because we're on Kieran's channel next week. If you haven't checked out Kieran's website, it's absolutely fabulous. It's a relatively new website, but I tell you what, it's absolutely fabulous and some lovely stuff going on there. And of course, check out my site. I got not far off 7,000 items on there. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good day.
See you all. Thank you.
Bye.